All right, welcome back. Today, I'm joined by my brother-in-law, JD. He is going to help me break down some of these fights for UFC 245. It is the last fight of the year, last pay-per-view fight of the year. It's the last pay-per-view fight of the decade, which is pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
A lot to look forward to in 2020, but we can't neglect the last little portion of 2019. So, brother, just let's get into it.
So first things first, figured to introduce myself a little bit. I am not Stephen Barnhill, and I'm not as educated in the fight game as Stephen Barnhill, but you could say I'm a little bit of a blue belt of fighting.
Oh!
So I went ahead and dressed the part. So.
Yes. Dang, I was wondering why he was like all bundled. It's not that cold down here in Houston. Oh my God.
All right, boys, here comes the blue belt breakdown of the fight game. Let's get into it.
He's been sandbagging us this whole time.
Sandbagging.
Damn, dude, coffee and jiu-jitsu. That
If you want to roll
better.
after this, we can get after it too.
Oh, we have Matt sitting just out of the screen.
That's right.
So you might get a little vlog session of us rolling some grappling. He'll take his Baja talents. I'll take my Baja Cantina, and we'll do our thing.
Heck yeah,
but
buddy.
yeah. Well, I feel like I'm naked, and no matter what I put on, I'm down on the scorecards. I've got a jiu-jitsu shirt on.
Oh, hey,
But,
you know what?
Yeah.
It counts
and
for
there's
something.
probably, jiu-jitsu is going to play a large part in this weekend's card. But I would say when we talking about the main event, the Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman, wrestling's going to be the big story there. These are probably the two best wrestlers in the entire 170-pound division.
By far.
Yeah, and they're clearly the best two. The two guys sitting above everybody else in that division. It's not even close. I think this is the most essential fight to have in 2019. It's a true showcase of mixed martial art at its highest level.
So just kind of speaking on that jiu-jitsu and wrestling thing, just to jump here, and it's a personal opinion. Some may disagree, but I think it's kind of interesting how, the UFC, MMA kind of, it is obviously mixed martial arts, but they kind of grab to certain styles as being pretty dominant in the cage on what works. And you can tell in the early days, it was for sure jiu-jitsu, right?
Oh, for
That's
sure.
what was, and it's amazing how much it's switched to wrestling.
Yeah.
It's wrestling dominant is all your top contenders,
Yeah.
right? Even from John Jones down.
Yeah.
So I think it's all the way down. John Jones to Henry Cejudo,
Yeah.
literally. So I think it's pretty interesting how it has made a switch, not to down on jiu-jitsu at all, because that's obviously what I enjoy the most of. But it's pretty interesting how the wrestlers have taken over.
Yeah, I regret not wrestling in high school.
Big time. Me too.
And the thing is, I think the reason that is the case today is because everybody that didn't know how to do jiu-jitsu got manipulated. And even if you did know how to wrestle, you didn't know what to do once you got to the ground, because largely wrestling happens, and then once it gets to the pin, then it's done. But in jiu-jitsu,
That's where it starts.
Yeah, that's where it all starts. So that's why judo guys and wrestlers and pretty much all strikers had no chance when it came to the ground game back in the early 90s when the Gracie family was kind of showcasing their skills. But since then, everybody realized that they had to include jiu-jitsu in their game, and that's why they started to do what we like to refer to as anti-jiu-jitsu. And wrestling is kind of caters perfectly to that, you know?
Definitely.
I know you've probably rolled with plenty of guys, I know I have, that are just really good at stalemating.
Oh, yeah.
They can just hang out on top, or like they're gonna press you down and keep you there. They're not gonna advance the position at all, but they're definitely not gonna let you get an inch.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite guys to roll with back at actually the school in Florida I went to. It wasn't Gracie Baja, but he was a D1 wrestler and was a no stripe white belt. I mean, just coming in, figuring it out, and it was really interesting to watch him figure it out and try to apply everything he already knew, which obviously right out the gate he was troublesome. So
yeah, well, those wrestlers, they're so good at controlling another human's body. And, and
they know how to manipulate their body weight for sure.
Right. So once you start to teach them how to extend people and lengthen people's joints and stuff like that, and then take all that pressure that you're applying and isolate it into a single limb, it's just game over from there.
For sure.
Yeah.
The funny thing is watching how strong they are in some aspects of it, but off his back. He like clueless, obviously it's
Yeah.
not part of his world. He'd
Yeah.
get to his back and immediately just give up his back trying to get around just because he didn't know what the heck to do. He didn't like guard, didn't make any sense to him at first. Obviously, I'm sure he's grown from it, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's a crazy thing I got to see one day at an open mat back in Savannah. The trainer, the black belt that owned the gym, was grappling with a black belt in judo, and they were both roughly the same size.
Ooh, that's
and
interesting. Yeah.
it was super interesting because they started standing up because that was basically the most realistic way for the judo guy to get any sort of
Right.
and it was really cool because the basically the black belt in jiu-jitsu knew some throws, knew some takedowns from the jiu-jitsu program, but he didn't actually know how to like make it happen against a judo black belt.
Oh yeah, I
So,
would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, he was like 0 for 10 on taking the judo guy down, but the judo guy was like 10 for 10 on taking him down. But as soon as they hit the ground, he would get submitted in 30 seconds. So it was just crazy to see how like one sport worked so well until it got to the other person's like comfort zone. I've thought of it as like a shark. Like, yeah, the shark can't hurt you if you're not in the water, but as soon as you get in the water, you're fucked.
Hey, and that's that's why MMA is the best sport out there, man. It's just like
Absolutely.
we're talking about, putting up styles against each other.
Right, and that's why essentially nobody has an undefeated record except for the unicorns in the sport like Khabib that just make it all this way. Whereas you see, he's got 29-0, whatever, 30-0 record, and almost everybody in boxing that carries a belt has at least that kind of a record.
That's true.
Because they figure out there's only it's very one-dimensional compared to mixed martial arts where there's a million ways to lose.
100%.
And everybody comes with a different specialty. So yeah, you might be really good against wrestlers, but then there's a jiu-jitsu guy that might give you some trouble. And then there's a Muay Thai guy, and if you're not up to standards, then that's why it's just such an interesting sport, and there's so many variables. That's why people love it so much.
That's why MMA math does not work.
It never works. It never works.
So speaking of stylistically, Usman and Colby couldn't be any more similar, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So who do you think's gonna, they obviously both push and try to be the dominant person in the fight, just as far as ring control and everything. Who do you think's gonna be able to out-dominate the other?
I'm unsure still to this point, and I think maybe go through fight week when we see like the weigh-ins and stuff, that might help sway my thoughts. I'm kind of pulling for Colby, and I love all fighters. Like, I don't have any bias. I'm not a hater on anybody really. But there's certain guys that entertain me and that draw me in with their out of the octagon antics, and Colby has just done that. I just think for the sport, it's great to see somebody that's willing to entertain and put on a show for the people, take that title and run with it. You make a great point. The pressure is everything, and both of these guys never take a step backwards.
Never.
But in a fight where there's two, every time there's a fight, somebody has to move backwards and somebody has to move forwards. It's a dance. You can't move like this, and when you do, you meet up. So I think because Colby has a little bit more of a volume style of fighting, especially with the striking and stuff, he's going to bring the pressure at first. I wouldn't underestimate Kamara's ability to use somebody's force to work some takedowns and stuff. We saw how good he is in the clinch and taking people down in his last fight. But
I think it's going to go round for round. That's my prediction. I really think it's going to be Colby's going to come out hot. He's going to come out with no regard to even thinking about taking a step back and push forward. By the time round 2 comes around, it may go a little bit the other way, and then round 3, I think it's going to be that interesting of a fight. Each one of them is going to dominate each round because that's how their energy levels are going to swing because their gas takes are so similar.
Yeah. I've heard that these two guys arguably have the best gas tanks in the in the division for sure, but in the UFC, aside from like the smaller guys that just simply don't have to move as much body around.
Right.
Neither of these guys are known for finishing fights. They don't have a ton of finishes. They both do it every now and again, but for the most part, it's just unanimous decisions and full-blown just, total domination,
Yeah, so that brings me to a question for you here. Would you rather? You got $1 million. You have to bet on a fighter, or you have to bet on a finish or decision. What are you betting on? Are you picking a fighter, or are you picking on a decision or finish?
I'm picking on it. It's going to be a finish.
Wow.
So,
okay. So I thought you might say that. I'm exactly the other way. I'd put all $1 million that it's going to be a decision.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I think so.
See, I just think that these two guys don't. I know, Kamaru Usman truly dislikes this guy, and Colby, I'm pretty sure he has a little bit of hatred against him, but he knows it's all a show. So I think he's able to put that aside and just put on a show for people and sell the fight the way he needs to. I don't know if they'll squash their beef or not after this. It might, if it goes to a 5-round decision. My prediction is there's not even another contender close that we should bring into that equation.
Rematch.
We need a rematch. We might
Absolutely.
need a third fight, and those guys can. That's a belt being held up that I'm totally fine with.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny jumping back to what you were talking about just a second ago, Colby and his antics. I think it's hilarious when people think he's bad for the sport. To me, that blows me away. They say that's not, you're supposed to respect your fighters. You get in there, do your job, blah, blah, be humble. Yeah, that's how you grow the sport. I couldn't disagree more. He's doing so much more for the sport than anyone has any idea.
Oh my God.
I mean, bringing eyes to it. I mean, if they want you to lose or if they want you to win, they want you.
Yeah.
That's the part you underline. They want you.
Right.
That's the important part.
Yeah. Take a page out of Floyd Mayweather's book.
100%.
Floyd goes, whether you want to see me lose or you want to see me win, you're going to see me fight.
That's right.
And that's the bottom line. And Colby understands that. There's never been a superhero movie or anything like that didn't have a bad guy in it.
That's right. That's
you
very
can't
true.
go have an interesting fight that people want to see when there's two people that don't have confrontation, that don't, rarely do fights that have no pre-fight antics and shit talking, for lack of a better term, sell big numbers. Every time you see a big pay-per-view or you see a big show in history, it's been because there's been a bad guy, a scary guy, one of those types of guys versus a good guy that everybody wants to see win. And I don't even I think Colby actually made this point earlier in the week. He said people don't even like Kamaru Usman. They hardly know Kamaru Usman, but they dislike me. So they don't want to see him win. They just want to see me lose. And I think that's so true. And aside from that, he's tagging himself and attaching himself to the Trump family, which in my opinion is it's hilarious.
Genius.
And it's genius because I think there's a large portion of mixed martial arts, combat sports fans that are,
Trump supporters.
Yeah, Trump supporters. They're
100%.
pro-Trump, and they find that they understand that it's a show and that he's just putting this on. He's that cheesy salesman,
Yeah.
but it works and they love it. So I'm really happy that this fight is being made. I'm really happy that it's headlining the card. I think it deserves all the credit it's getting. I'm sure it's going to be a very entertaining fight. There's no way when you have two guys this entertaining with this much anger built up that you don't get just a banger.
My total prediction on it is it's going to be an outstanding fight. I think it's going to be a split decision finish, and I think they're going to do it again. If I could pick anything.
Who's going to take the victory?
Oh man, that would be the hardest part of that whole prediction.
That's why you don't put the $1 million on a fighter.
That's right. I would do Colby. I think he wants it more. I think somebody that's willing to put in that much in the antics and promote fights and everything, they also are putting themselves on the line to lose a lot more. The more you talk crap, the more you're putting yourself out there, and it is a self-motivator.
Yeah.
I know
back it up.
Yeah, 100%. From your own sports. I mean, put yourself in your own sports mindset. Mm-hmm. If you're talking all that crap, you're going to be, and then you go back and you got a few weeks to train, you're going to hit it so hard because you got to back up what you're talking about. That's how I feel anyway.
Absolutely.
But man, especially in a fight like this, it could definitely go either way.
Yeah, I think so. And the 5-round split decision is probably the safe way to bet if you were to bet on this one. I haven't looked at the favorites. Who's the favorite? Who's the underdog? I think Usman has a little bit of a edge on that, but that's just because he's the champion. I don't know. Super excited about it.
Yeah, interesting. They're both 15-1.
Oh wow!
Exactly, 15-1.
That's insane.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, yeah. Well, the rest of the card really doesn't let us down at all. You know, they could have taken such a big fight and then just given us, filler, but they decided since it's the end of the year, let's just blast them hard.
Yeah.
So they came in hot with 245. The co-main event of the evening is Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. Max Holloway's arguably the most dominant 45 featherweight champion of all time. And
he's coming off a loss, right? And 155. That's his last fight.
Yeah.
That's gonna be interesting because obviously it's not something he's used to coming off a loss.
Right. Yeah.
I think it'd be a motivator if anything. But
yeah, I think he was on an 11 or 12 fight win streak before and the only person he lost to was a unanimous decision to Conor McGregor. But back in that day, everybody was losing to Conor McGregor. So Volkanovski has said, you went and tested the waters at 55. I'm going to just end your career here at 45. I'll take the belt. You can go move up and play with the big boys. But Volkanovski is a very interesting fighter. He is – a lot of people aren't discussing this. He used to be 240 pounds when he played rugby back in Australia.
Of muscle.
Yeah. He wasn't some softy. He was a yoked, swole, 240-pound, 5'6".
That's amazing.
Looked
Honestly,
like a bowling ball. I'm almost shocked that his body looks as tight as it does after losing 100 pounds.
Yeah.
You would think that there'd be some excess skin or something like that, but he looks amazing. And another interesting point on them is he's 5'6", and apparently Max Holloway's 5'11". That's probably a little bit embellished. I would say 5'10" to 5'6", but Volkanovski has a 2-inch reach advantage on Max Holloway, which is bizarre.
Yeah, that is very bizarre.
He must have some long arms.
Extremely.
Yeah.
Probably deadlifting all that weight at 240 pounds, stretching him out.
Stretched him right out. But yeah, I think he's a grinder. Clearly, you don't come from rugby and not know how to just grind out some tough grappling situations and learn to just be a dog. But
you think Max is going to stick on the outside and pick him apart? Or do you think he's going to get in there and let him grind?
I've been saying this about Max Holloway for a while. He has the skills to do that. He is one of the best strikers in MMA. He's one of the most entertaining fighters. But the fact that he's one of the most entertaining fighters is almost a risk that if I was his coach, I would hate it, because he's willing to get in a firefight with anybody. He's willing to bite down on the mouthpiece, stand in the middle of the octagon, and just throw blows for blows. And that, to me, is what scares me about him, because he's been in so many fights where that's been the case, and 5-round fights, and title defend after title defense.
Not scared of a war, yeah.
Right, but the one thing that comes with that is you can't build your chin. Your chin is what it is, and the more it gets hit, the more it deteriorates.
Yeah, it only deteriorates.
Right, and Volkanovski is, he packs a punch, literally. He's just like this little ball of fury, and he's super explosive. I think because he's so muscle-bound, he might not have the energy to make it all 5 rounds at the same pace that he would like to, maybe the same pace Max is willing to do. But, 1 or 2 of those big shots that he lands, like he landed on Jose Aldo, if it hits Max's chin the right way, and I'm not saying Max's chin hasn't been tested and proven, but the more it gets hit, the more I just worry about it. I'm like, I don't know. This guy's a beast, and if you can't just go get in a firefight with Volkanovski, because he's shown that he can tear your legs up, and then once he slows you down there, just start to wail away at your face.
I agree. It's interesting how the muscle boundness, I feel like, is another thing that's starting to slip away. People are starting to realize technique and stamina is where it's at.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, someone like Israel Adesanya, right? I mean, just technique and stamina, that leanness, and like Colby. I mean, he's not a huge muscle-bound person, but he's going to just keep working you. So, Max can do that. I think, he's not totally muscle-bound. He's not carrying around a lot of weight. He can take it into deep rounds, and he's willing to go to war in the deep rounds too. So that's going to be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if I see this fight going the distance. I think that if Max can implement a game plan and stick to it, that he can probably, I don't ever want to be the guy that bets against Max Holloway, especially at 145 pounds.
Right.
He can pretty much do it all. But if there is a guy that can come dethrone him, I think they found the right guy in Volkanovski. I believe he's 21-1, just an absolute stud. Doesn't lose. He's on a 17-fight win streak right now, and that's unheard of. Like we were saying, undefeated records are unheard of in MMA, and 17 victories alone is impressive. But 17 in a row.
This is a extremely risky fight for Holloway, be it that going up a weight class and having your safety belt behind you. There's risk there. Obviously, you always want to win.
Safety belt, I like that.
Yeah, it's got his safety belt on, man. He's got his seat belt. So you go up there, you lose, you come back, you're champ. He's running around as champ right now. Not much has changed. He got a nice payday. Ego hurt a little bit, and he's back in action. This one, the weight of the pressure is going to be on him for sure, because you can't mess around and lose again.
This is his weight class.
100%.
He's the king of it.
You got to defend.
You can't get dethroned. If you go, like he was going to fight Khabib on short notice, and it was just too short time, he couldn't make it happen. But there's no pressure when you go up and you do that. You're, like you said, you're playing with house money.
Exactly.
At that
That's
point.
the best way to put it.
So I think, and who did he fight? Anthony Showtime Pettis, or who was it? Who was it that he took his loss to at 55? Or no, was it Tony Ferguson?
No, Poirier.
Poirier. I'm thinking. I'm like, I know he had tattoos all over him. Yeah, Poirier. You're right. Poirier's no walk in the park.
No.
And he actually used to be a 45er, but he's naturally built for 55. And I think that's the right move for him. Holloway looked great in that fight, showed how much of a dog he truly is. But it's just one of those things. It's any fighter on any given night can just get the better of another fighter.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Those two fights stacked so far. They haven't let us down one bit.
Not a little.
I want to say the co main event, because I don't want to slight these ladies at all. We've got arguably the greatest, most dominant fighter in MMA right now, Amanda Nunes fighting Germaine de Randamie. And so Germaine de Randamie, which before we get into that, Gracie Barra, the home of the great Valentina Shevchenko.
That's right.
So we got to shout her out. I know you've gotten some good grappling rounds in with her, preparing her for some fights before.
A couple times,
great.
yeah. It was actually an honor. It's pretty cool.
Well, not to take away from the other girls in the fight this weekend, but I would say Valentina Shevchenko is the most skilled female fighter on the planet. Arguably one of the most skilled fighters, period.
She's naturally down there at the 125. That's where I can tell by looking at her in person.
Right.
And actually rolling with her. To think that she went up and arguably beat Amanda Nunes in one or two fights, however you want to put it, is pretty amazing, considering Amanda Nunes can go up and beat someone like Cyborg. And just a side note, I think it's hilarious that I was not a Nunes fan. I was against her, completely wanting Cyborg to win that fight. Wow. And in most fights against Amanda Nunes, I wasn't a big fan. I thought other people would be better for the sport. And then the second she won, it was like the biggest 180 bandwagon ever. Yeah. I don't know. It was genuine, though, where I was like, I really want her to win all her fights now. I want her to run with it. She's done something amazing. I think she deserves it. Now I want her to hold it.
Yeah, she's earned it. And, you don't just go and beat the monster, the Goliath that is Cyborg, and then not get my respect.
Yeah, and,
that was the same way.
And a quick knockout, too.
Yeah. And which also gives credit to Shevchenko. How does Shevchenko go 8 rounds with Amanda Nunes and Cyborg can't make it to the second?
Exactly.
It's pretty impressive.
Speaking of not making it to the second, that would be my prediction of this fight.
Oh, you think Amanda Nunes is going to take her down?
I think she pieces her up bad.
So I was going to ask, because I'm not sure about this one. Amanda Nunes, obviously, I'm not going to bet against her. I've got her winning the fight. I've got her winning by knockout. But Germaine de Randamie is no joke. She's no slouch. She's beaten a guy before in kickboxing.
Wow.
Or Muay Thai. And she's the Iron Lady. She's a Muay Thai specialist. And the reason Valentina Shevchenko lost, in my opinion, to Amanda Nunes is because she just simply didn't have the power. Now, I believe Germaine de Randamie isn't quite at the level of striking for MMA that Valentina Shevchenko is. But I think with that extra, she's a natural 145 or 135 or floats right there perfectly. With the extra couple pounds added, she's going to fight a style very similar to Valentina Shevchenko as far as on the feet goes. And, I don't think, like Max Holloway, that Amanda Nunes has taken much damage, especially in recent times. She's kind of just taken everybody out one by one without much damage, and that's great for her because she's able to just move along, and CTE and brain damage and deterioration of the chin is what everybody's worst nightmare, and she hasn't really had to deal with that.
I agree.
But Germaine de Randamie's knockout power is something that has to be respected, and I don't see Amanda as being somebody that's going to come in there and not respect her and not stay smart. I see it being a first or second round finish, but I think the 5 to 10 minutes as it lasts is going to be a hell of a fight.
See, I almost see it as a little differently. I don't think she's going to go in respecting her just purely based off the way she had zero respect for Cyborg. I mean, if you watch that fight, it was a complete fury immediately. There was some hard throws from Cyborg that Nunes was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And then it was turned on. And I just think...
Unfortunately, we ran into some technical difficulties and we lost the remainder of the footage, but we still have the audio. So here's a screenshot of us. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Amanda Nunes in the pocket is got plenty of power, of course, that's obvious. But I think she's a little bit more collected in her...
Precise.
I think she's a little bit more precise in her wild, heavy throws. Yeah, she's more as precise as you can be in that situation when you're just standing and banging, as they say. So, I mean, if you rewatch that fight with her, she lands almost every one of those wild shots on Cyborg. Like all of them land in one way or another. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I mean, most people at least miss one. You know what I mean? She lands one after one after one, and they are coming from the hip. They're coming real wide. They're coming straight down they're all over the board.
Yeah,
and I think she feels some heat from. Randamie there that she'll just turn it up herself and she'll be better in the pocket. I think that's how it ends.
Yeah, she's a hell of a boxer. It kind of, her performance against Cyborg kind of reminded me of Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor, because Conor anything he threw wouldn't miss that night.
That's true.
It was just everything he threw was right on the money. And Cyborg kind of exposed herself as a reckless fighter.
Yep.
We had seen it a little bit before, but she was always finishing girls with crazy knockouts that people were just like, okay, well, like, as soon as one of those touches you, Amanda Nunes got touched by one or two of them, but then she's like, oh, I can slip and dip under these. I can move right out of the way, and she's leaving herself exposed because she's throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at me, and then she's leaving herself compromised and off balance, and that's where Amanda was just capitalizing.
I literally think it's going to be a total repeat. I really do. I think that just because the same style. Yeah. She's going to go in there, she's going to try to apply some pressure, and Amanda's going to slip and stay in the pocket and land them.
Yeah, she's going to
would be my prediction.
Duck,
you never know.
Dip, dive, and dodge.
That's right.
Like Patches O'Houlihan said. Well, yeah, those ladies, I think they found the right people to compete for the 135 title. I'm pretty sure Amanda's going to take that one, but
could see an upset. You never know. It's a fight game.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you see Amanda doing after all of this? I mean, she's essentially wiped out the division. If Germaine de Randamie, in her last fight, she fought Aspen Ladd and absolutely demolished her. And people were, hype on Aspen Ladd, and there's reasons to be excited for her in the future, but there's a saying, don't bite off more than you can chew, and I think the UFC just gave her way too much than she can handle, and you can't just go in there against a seasoned vet like Germaine de Randamie and expect to just ragdoll him with your wrestling. I mean, the wrestling side is huge, and it's very important, like we were talking about earlier, but when it comes down to striking in MMA, you've got, especially in females, you've got Amanda Nunes, Germaine de Randamie, Valentina Shevchenko, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Those four. Holly Holm, yeah. How can you forget? She's probably the best 500 fighter the UFC's ever seen.
I mean, how many times are we going to see this Nunes, de Randamie, Holly Holm? I mean, trifecta. Which one's going to fight which one next? I think Nunes, after she wins this fight, if she does win this fight, is going to feel pretty comfortable, and it's going to be kind of like the maybe like a more of like a boxing situation where it's like, okay, who are we going to just keep feeding her to make her the best ever?
Well, it's funny. It's so funny you say that. I look at it like King of the Hill. She's just going to sit up there and knock everybody down. So
not giving anybody enough time to build up. There's not enough other people for other people to fight and get good enough to fight her.
So how about some parity? Because you just said boxing, which reminded me. Clarissa Shields, Olympic gold medalist, monster boxer, best female boxer in the game right now, has recently been talking a little bit about wanting to try her hand in mixed martial arts, particularly in the UFC, and particularly in the 135 division against Amanda Nunes. Now, a little birdie told me that she will be in the crowd this weekend in Vegas, sitting around the ring, or around the octagon, watching closely to see what happens between Nunes and de Randamie. And okay, so if she's willing to come over as a boxer, then props to her. Now, if she's gonna come over here for a publicity stunt and then try to pull Amanda over to boxing,
more likely,
more than likely that's what's gonna happen. But that's, in my opinion, the coward's way out.
Yeah.
Too many times MMA fighters have thrown themselves over there, said, look, I'll box any of your best boxers. Look at Conor when he went and fought the greatest to ever do it. Look at Canelo, just got called out by George Masvidal. Stipe Miocic is calling out Deontay Wilder and calling out Anthony Joshua, all these Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
You know, when are one of these guys or girls going to call out a UFC fighter? This is one of those cases where I think we might actually see that. She believes that she can shuck and play defense enough to where she can keep it on the feet and knock somebody like Amanda Nunes out. Amanda Nunes has a black belt tattooed on her.
She's mistaken. So the reality of it is, for someone in boxing to come over to MMA would have to be the perfect storm of having somebody like a Conor McGregor or whoever that is not going to take you down.
Right.
You're going to still get kicked. So you even want somebody that's less of a threat with their feet even. You want just someone that likes to strike only.
Nate Diaz style.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, Nate Diaz still has a huge threat on the ground game, but
he's not going to take you there.
He won't take you there. Now, if you're coming in as a boxer, he's going to try to outstrike you.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I think Amanda Nunes likes being on top. I think she would be probably one of the few that are smart enough to send some leg kicks, take her down, beat her on the ground, and say, this is what this sport's all about.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to stay on the feet and outbox a boxer, just to prove a point.
And I would love to see her ragdoll her.
I mean, why not?
She's an American top team elite fighter. She's a black belt. Like I said, she's got a black belt tattooed on her. You don't just get that unless you've truly earned it.
At least in the first round, right? Take her down, beat her to a pulp on the ground. If she survives the round, then you can stand up together the rest of the fight. But she knows you could do that at any point.
At any point in time, just to show the people. So I would love to see a little parody. I think it would bring some new fans, some new attention to not only female fighting, but the UFC's bantamweight division.
I agree.
And I'm super excited to see what kind of stuff they do with her in the crowd, because I think there's room for her to either step in the ring or step in the octagon, or walk up or say something to Amanda afterwards,
100%.
or even Amanda get asked a few questions in the post-fight speech if she wins about her thoughts on fighting a Clarissa Shields.
It's worth it just to have it on the roll, right? On the camera roll.
Absolutely.
So if it happens or not, if it happens, you got the promo ready to be cut. If it doesn't, no big deal.
Absolutely. The guys, they got a little shine as far as cross promoting. I think the girls should get some shine too. Earlier in the night, we're going to have a bantamweight bout, and this is a bantamweight bout that one of the guys is very familiar with the bantamweight division, but
the other one is now a corpse.
Yeah, Jose Aldo looks like Jose Aldo's skeleton, and Jose is coming to 135, and he decided he didn't want to take any sort of a tune-up fight, and that's not usually something we do in MMA. But Marlon Moraes is nobody's, stepping stone. Before he was looking incredibly unbeatable and like a world beater until he met Henry Cejudo, and that's when we saw Henry Cejudo beat him. That's when I gave all credit to Henry Cejudo.
Yeah. I mean that guy, they call him Magic for a reason. But I couldn't, jumping back to my rude comment on Jose there. I do respect him as a fighter.
Yeah.
I think what should happen, I was thinking about this earlier today, honestly. It's pretty hard to stop guys from going to whatever weight class they can physically get their body to, right?
Right.
You know, they're talking about possible hydration tests or whatever. Would that stop guys from dropping too much weight? I think this. Earlier on, instead of doing these crazy hydration tests that could be cheated or whatever, you know, you chug a bottle of water before they, whatever the case, you get weighed in at the start of you get signed.
When you sign your contract.
You get weighed in. Okay. At that point, you cannot go more than one weight class down. So say you weigh at 146, you're fighting at 145.
Yeah.
Say you weigh at 144, you can fight at 135.
Yeah.
Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So you can't skip one.
Right.
So when this was signed, if he was more than 145 pounds, then he couldn't bypass 45 to get to 35. I think that's the best way to do it.
Right.
You can't skip 2 weight classes because that's when it gets dangerous.
It's dangerous for the fighters.
And I don't care what anyone says. You look at the pictures of this guy, I mean, it's going to be dangerous for him.
Yeah, and it's crazy because a lot of the fighters are vocal about it. They're like, "Yo, this doesn't look healthy," and then you've got other fighters like Conor McGregor saying it looks like he's managing this weight cut properly. Now, if anybody knows how to manage a weight cut, it's Conor McGregor. He looked like death.
Yeah.
Death at 145, especially in his last bout at 145. He was just shredded. His face was all shrunken in.
That 145 to 170 side by side of him is insane.
And that's one of the things about the 55 division. I think it's great if we can keep the guys within 10, 15 pounds of their fighting of their weight class. Khabib, it's been said that he lives over 190 pounds. So he's cutting 40 pounds essentially to make the fight happen at 155.
See, and the reality of this rule that I've come up with is it's perfect. Okay, because say he wants to stay at 170, he doesn't want to fight, meaning Khabib, he doesn't want to fight 185. That's fine, but then you got to keep yourself at all times below 185.
Right.
Because then when fight time comes, you're not just cutting weight, or you're not just cutting water.
Right.
You're a lot closer. Because then you're keeping, it's a year-round thing instead of I got 3 months, I got 6, whatever the case may be. It'll keep you, you can still get down there. It's not stopping guys from getting to where they want to be, but you got to stay down there. You're not all the way down to your weight class, but you can't stay 2 weight classes ahead.
Right.
Khabib would have to live under 185. He'd have to walk around at 184.
Right.
And he can fight the 170 division.
I think
that's how
totally
I see
fair.
it. I mean, how easy is that?
Yeah.
It'd save a lot of these big jumps.
Everybody would just move up. If you look at
exactly
Marlon Moraes' body, he's yoked. He should definitely be fighting at 145. Jose should definitely be fighting at 145.
Definitely.
But most of the 45ers should also be moving themselves up to 155, and everybody just take that step forward. You're still fighting the same people, and you're essentially still fighting at the same weight because you step on the scale, and then 100%. You have 24 hours, 36
It's such a
hours.
song and dance. They're doing it because everybody's doing it.
Right.
And it would be so much better if nobody had to do it. If you had to say, okay, nobody has to cut weight, you're golden.
Right.
Sport's better.
I look at it like steroids. It's like if everybody's doing it, then you have to do it to participate. But if nobody's allowed to do it, then you're going to catch the people that are doing it, and you're going to be able to stop them.
Exactly.
So I think that's the ugliest part of the sport. I wish it was changed. I'm sure it will change in the future. But for now, we just have to deal with it. And I'm super excited to see how Jose Aldo does down at 135. I don't know what happens if he loses this fight. He's been kind of worried about, should I go try boxing? Should I try professional soccer? He's talked about all kinds of different things, but he still has that passion for fighting. But I just don't know, historically speaking, if it's a good move for fighters to move down a weight division, especially the older they get and the further along in their career they get.
It always looks desperate, doesn't it? I mean, it looks pretty desperate. Even if you go down there and win, it's slightly of a desperate look.
Yeah, I would have rather seen him go to 155.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the general consensus, and this is totally just like bro science, but like, okay, well, if I fought at 145 and I was a contender and I was doing really well, if I go down to 135, I should be able to just ragdoll all these guys. That's not the case, especially if these guys are natural, born for 135, their body and frame is made for it. They're at their peak when they're weighing in and fighting you. Whereas if you're pulling an extra 10 pounds of, I mean, let's face it, he doesn't have 10 more pounds of fat to get rid of.
He didn't, not at 145.
So he's taking some muscle away. He's not taking bones away. So you have to take away some muscle. And I think with muscle comes a little bit of power, and with the power, with also deteriorating your muscle comes lower energy levels.
Absolutely. I mean, he's just, his body's going to be depleted and energy levels for sure. I mean, and now you're dealing with 135, so high energy. I mean, 145 is as well, but every jump down 10 pounds is even higher energy, higher volume.
Yeah, those guys are like bees. They just like buzz around the ring. You watch like a heavyweight fight, and then you watch those two guys go at it.
A tussle, like a little grappling match that goes down with that, like hitting the ground back up and reversals and everything, can't happen any faster than it does in the 125-pound division.
So true.
I mean, it literally, who's on top? This guy's on top. This guy's on top. This guy. I mean, it's just constant.
Yeah, it's really insane. Well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. If I had to make a prediction, I think Marlon Moraes is probably going to get the job done. I think I would love to see a knockout, another one of those spectacular high kicks to the head or something that he can do. But something's telling me this, with it being 3 rounds, it's going to be a decision, and I think he can grind it out. You know, he showed us against Cejudo that he didn't quite have the stamina to make it into the championship rounds and keep his pace. But 3 rounds, that's his bread and butter.
That is a big favoritism to him that it's 3. I think. Yeah.
So you got Moraes as well.
Oh man, as much as I'd want to see Jose after all this hard work and how bad he needs it, you know, a loss right now for Moraes, it doesn't hurt him nearly as bad as it hurts Jose. Once Jose, if he loses this fight, it is like, where am I going, soccer?
Right.
You know, it's a big one for him. So I think, truthfully, I think when you suck that much water and weight out of you like he has, I think your chin gets soft. I think it gets caught and goes down.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, and I'd love to see him win. I'd love to see him get back in the winning ways, but for some reason I'm just feeling
and I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, me too. Me too. If I'm a betting man, I'm betting on Moraes. And the one fight that's going to be kicking off the main card is one that I'm personally super excited for, because
the old curtain jerker.
The curtain jerker and the man himself, the California Kid, is back.
The California grandfather.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, can I get some sun in? I need to dye my hair back to blonde. It's probably gray by now. But no, Uriah Faber is coming back, and they threw him to the wolves. You know, he Peter Yan is who he's fighting. I think they say Piotr or something like that, but this guy is a monster. If you've seen any of the footage on him, it's insane. He's just one of those grinders.
Yeah.
I believe he comes from Russia. He trains all over the world, Thailand, all over these places, and he's just an animal. But Uriah Faber is arguably one of the best bantamweights that's ever fought in the UFC, and without a doubt, the best bantamweight that's never won the UFC belt.
Oh, without a doubt. So there's something interesting with Uriah. You remember that obvious change in Henry Cejudo from the Mighty Mouse Fight 1 and Mighty Mouse Fight 2?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just looked like a completely different fighter. He's like, oh, man, I figured out what kind of crazy level I need to get to win. Not to that extent, but I think the last fight we saw with Uriah, we saw one of the best versions of him we've ever seen.
Yeah.
If you would agree. His last fight, I feel, was one of his best performances, and it seemed like he finally got out of the, I love the guy, but the Cowboy Cerrone way, where you're trying to be the best pencil when the computer's been invented type of thing.
True.
You just kind of
stiff.
Just kind of need to take the next step to kind of get out of that same. And another person who's guilty of it is like Holly Holm. Yeah. Or a Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I think they've got their set way, and you got to step over that one more level to become that next better fighter that evolve with the sport.
Right.
And we saw Henry Cejudo do that hand over fist. I mean, his jump was gigantic, but I do think Uriah's step was pretty large in that direction. I feel like he kind of figured out which direction he's now. What he's been doing in between now and then is how he's been training is going to definitely tell how this fight goes. If he goes back and says, I'm back in it, I'm going to go, like, what did I used to do for fight camps? I'm doing that. Completely pulverized.
Yeah.
If he's made a giant change and has had a completely different fight camp than the way he's done. Not that it was bad in the past, but the sport's evolved.
Yeah.
If he's made that change in his fight camp, I think he's got a shot.
Absolutely. Well, I think the sport of MMA evolves more than any other sport and at a quicker rate than anything else we've ever seen. So, yeah, you have to stay on top of it, and you really can't afford to take time off like a Uriah Faber did or a Dominic Cruz. And it's crazy to see those guys still literally in the mix, in the top 3, top 5 of the arguably one of the toughest divisions in all of MMA. They're still in the swing of things. I have heard through a lot of people who've been in the sport, and not just this sport, but in all sports, that when you start teaching, you become a better student. And I think
that would make sense.
Yeah, well, because you see things from an outside perspective. And he's been coaching so many guys, Cody Garbrandt and the rest of the alpha male guys that are all doing great things in their own regard. But he's been able to showcase and teach them all kinds of different things and see what they're doing wrong, see what the new era is doing right, and they're able to fix things. And I think his fight IQ has gone up significantly, and he's the body type, and he's the young, youthful athlete that can adapt and understand what his mind is seeing and translate it into what his body can actually do.
I agree.
So
he's definitely just a natural-born athlete. It's just, like I said, I think it's just the proper training at this point, which sounds crazy to say about someone like him, but just a different style, I should say.
Yeah.
A little bit more in and out, a little bit better maybe head movement, getting around. I mean, I know he does all those things well, but just it's just that kind of that stagnant, stiff. You got to get out of that. Right.
And, I don't want to forget about Petr Yan, because that guy is an animal and he's been on a tear, and I believe if he's able to get past Uriah Faber, he'll get a title shot within the year of 2020. But I can't say that I want to see anybody win a fight more than I want to see Uriah Faber win, because if Uriah wins this fight, it's off to the races. I want to see Cowboy Cerrone with a UFC title around his waist. I want to see Uriah Faber with the title around their waist. There's certain fighters,
there are two guys that deserve it more, honestly.
No, and that's the whole thing. I thought when Uriah retired, I was like, oh man, he never got this. He's had the other belts and the other promotions, but it's not the same, and he knows it's not the same. I think that's why driving
he's back.
him.
Yeah, 100%. It's like the Miesha Tate. Is there any talk about her coming back? Absolutely not. You want to know why? Because she pulled that last second choke out on Holly Holm, got the belt, lost her next one. Whatever. Yeah. I've been champ before. I've done amazing things in the sport, and I've been the champ. I'm gonna run off into the sunset.
She climbed the mountain, and now she's seen the top. She got the view, and now she's on her way to the next chapter of life. And I think Uriah Faber deserves this more than pretty much anybody, like you were saying. And that's what's fueling him for these big competitions. That's why he don't give him a top 15 or unranked guy. He wants to jump right back in the mix. That's where he was when he retired, and it was a little bit of a early retirement, a lot of people thought, but then he's right back in the swing of things. And there's so much fun to be had in the 135 division if he can get through Petr Yan. Tell me you wouldn't want to see a Dominic Cruz fight again.
Come on.
Tell me. But the number one for him, and even if it's, I understand that neither of these guys have the title right now, but TJ Dillashaw in the rematch, or not in the rematch, in the comeback, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
After this 2-year suspension, he will have had a long layoff. It's crazy to think that Uriah will have been more active than TJ.
That's true.
And there's just such a storyline there. We got to see that fight.
They have to make that fight. And that's probably, if I'm a betting man, Dana is thinking the same.
Oh, he has to. And that's the biggest money fight the bantamweight division can possibly make right now. The feud between TJ Dillashaw and Team Alpha Male is largely the feud between Uriah Faber and TJ Dillashaw, and I think it's just because they were such close friends.
Yep.
That it's one of those things that has to be resolved, and this is the only sort of business where you can literally put a mouthpiece in and go fight
get it resolved.
And I would love to. Those two, if KSI and Logan Paul can squash their beef after that whole thing, then these two are going to squash their beef afterwards. And I would love to see that chapter close with that whole feud. And
Uriah's one that after the fact could squash it. Cody's not That's why that'll never be squashed between Cody and
right.
TJ.
And that's why I feel like Uriah and TJ have to fight, because it was like everybody was just going on behalf of Uriah to fight TJ.
Get this. So this should be on the same card. Okay, follow me. Jorge Masvidal versus Nick Diaz. TJ versus Uriah. Time to bring out the big brothers.
Oh yeah, bring them out and let's see.
You beat up my little brother. It's time to bring out the big brothers.
We'll go to Northern California too, because Alpha Male's up in Sacramento.
It's perfect.
And then Stockton's right around the corner from there, so we might have to go maybe put that one on in San Francisco or something.
That's a good theme to a card,
dude. It would be so good, and we'll have to break that down when the time comes. But coming back to this fight with Uriah and Peter Yan, if he's able to get past Peter Yan, I don't even see him as being one of those guys that is gung-ho on chasing Henry Cejudo. Henry has come out and said, I want the big fights, I want the money fights, I'm in this solely for the money. Yeah. And he goes, if they're not willing to pay me what I want, they can have their belts back and I'll retire.
But he needs to be a little bit careful with those words.
Yeah, he does. But I think he wants that Dominic Cruz fight next, and then I think he wants to wait for Uriah. And if we can just play like what's the word?
Devil's advocate?
Yeah, no, not even devil's advocate. If we can just play like future fight mania, whatever you want to call it, and have TJ win this weekend against Peter Yan, and Dominic Cruz go fight Henry Cejudo and lose, and win. So Dominic Cruz versus Uriah Faber for the title. Uriah takes it because he wants to avenge that loss to Dominic Cruz. He beat Cruz a long time ago, way back in the day, and then he lost to Cruz. Uriah comes in, takes the title from Dominic just in time for TJ to come in. The 135 division would literally be the most exciting division in all of MMA. Out of nowhere. And it'd be a bunch of guys that had retired or been out of the sport for years. So I'm really looking forward to this fight. First and foremost.
Man, you get the 135 that exciting. You're gonna see Mystic Mac cutting some weight.
I know
he can't miss that kind of excitement.
I know it, right? I know it. Yeah, and I think Colby Covington wouldn't be the only one making a division great again. I think Uriah Faber, with a win this weekend, will 100% make the 135 division even greater than it already is.
I agree. Him winning this fight is really good for the sport, good for the division.
Crazy to think the California kid's jerking the curtain, but hey, everybody has to do something. There's a role for everybody, and we're just so happy to have him on the card.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And right before then, on ESPN2, so before we move into the pay-per-view fights, we've got quite a banger. And the Platinum Man himself, and he's not platinum for selling records. He's just platinum for being himself, man. This guy doesn't hold anything back. We've got Platinum Mike Perry.
That's right.
Coming in against Jeff Neal. Now, I know you're a big Platinum guy.
You know what, man? You can't dog a guy that is that exciting.
No.
I mean,
face tattoos,
just coming out with the mohawk, acting like a rooster. I mean, that's just pure excitement. And he's doing that. There's certain guys like Colby that do it because they know it's good business. There's certain guys that do it because they're crazy. A Diaz does it because he's crazy. A Platinum Mike Perry does it because he's crazy.
We were talking about that the other day. So we have marks in the sport, we have workers in the sport, and then we have the unintentional workers.
The unintentional
and
workers.
Mike Perry fits right in there.
He is the king of the unintentional worker.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'd like to see him come back after that. I'd like to see him win this fight purely based off of what he went through in that last fight where his nose was touching his ear.
Oh, my God, yeah. There's not many cuts or injuries on the face worse than that one in all of MMA history.
A lot of people would have taken a longer break, I feel like. Not that the injury would sustain that long, but just kind of reevaluate what that he I doubt he even thought about
He's
it.
a fighter.
He
He's
was
like,
probably had that thing set and was back in the gym like, I got to roll light.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, he put one of those like face mask things on. It's like, just don't need me in the face.
Yeah.
But no, I'm so excited to see him. He checks all the boxes for star potential. And I don't see him being one of the guys that takes a title and holds it for a long time or maybe even ever gets there. But there's something to be said for a guy that can draw that doesn't ever touch the title. He's a top 10 guy. He's a 5 to 10 guy, and he'll stay there for a long time. But those kind of guys are so important. They're like
extremely.
a Cowboy Cerrone. Because if you can put those guys on a card and it boosts up the card for the guys that are the future that are going to come next, I mean, that job is essential and it's necessary to have in the UFC. And I just feel like he's one of those guys that's going to put asses in seats until the day he retires.
Not enough people writing checks they can't cash, but in his, this is a good idea when they're not, title contenders.
Right.
They're kind of waiting until later, they actually got shit to talk. Essentially, they got some resume behind them, so they don't get shut up. He doesn't care.
Yeah, and
I mean, his resume, it does not matter to him. He's going to talk as much on this as the prelim fighter as he would if he was the main event.
Right. Yeah, that's what I love about him. He understands the position he's in, I think, and that's what shows like his intelligence. And that a lot of people probably don't think.
I use that term loosely.
Yeah. But he's one of those guys that is willing to fight absolutely anybody on absolutely any given card because he knows that he's a draw. He's bigger than some of these title runs and picking and choosing his opponents just so he can kind of walk his way up. He just wants to put on a show for the people, and I commend him for that. I'll never bet against Mike Perry unless he fights against somebody that I just truly have, like hopes and dreams for to see in the title fights or something like that. But as far as this weekend, I got to see him get a victory.
Could two people in this world be so similar and so opposite at the same time? Cowboy Cerrone and Mike Perry.
Oh my God, they're so alike.
They're so alike in so many ways and so opposite in so many ways.
Yeah. And I think Cerrone almost took his arm home that night when he pulled that arm bar. But
I was happy to see Cerrone win that fight.
Yeah, that's a rare case where I'd like to see somebody beat Perry. But Cerrone's just, in my eyes, the GOAT. And not for the reasons that he's the greatest to ever do it, but he's just the GOAT as far as street cred, as far as credit amongst the sport. I love him. Platinum Mike Perry, I'm saying it's a second round knockout. He's gonna figure out some of the striking with Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal's gonna bring it to him, but ultimately I think he catches a knockout with one of those power hooks.
Absolutely, I could agree. I could see a nice clip where he gets him rocked and he gets on top of him and just goes ham. Yeah, a lot of ground to pound, a lot of elbows, creates a lot of blood, and it's a stoppage.
Yeah. Well, hell. I'm usually way off on all my predictions.
Hey,
so
the blue belt of fight predictions right here, baby.
Oh, man. Well, shoot, I'm still a white belt. Actually, I haven't even gone to the dojo yet. But man, I'm super excited for it. We might have to bust these mats out and roll real quick
We're
because
gonna have to.
Anytime somebody wears a gi in my house, we touch those mats, we bow in, and we have some fun. So hope you guys enjoyed. That was our little bit of a fight prediction, fight breakdown for UFC 245. It's coming up this weekend, Saturday, December 14th. You don't want to miss out on that. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, turn on post notifications, all that good stuff. We really appreciate all you guys watching, and stay tuned for a lot more content coming your way. And one more time for my man JD Jackson.
That's right. Hey, hit that like button for my boy Nick Barnhill right here in the blue belt of the fight prediction game, or I'm going to come to your house and pull guard on you.
Oh, yeah.